welcome to our special council session of November 20th, 2024. Sheila, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Knoll?
Here.
Ms. Atrop?
Here.
Ms. Weltman?
Here.
Ms. Godek? Mr. Lemay?
Here.
Mr. Gentili?
Here.
Dr. Wong?
Here.
Great. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of
the United States of America
and
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Our first agenda item this evening is the approval of the council minutes of October 16th and October 23rd. Could we please have a motion regarding the minutes of October 16th?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Not hearing any, roll call, please.
Mr. Knoll?
Abstain.
Ms. Atrop?
Yes.
Ms. Weltman?
Abstain.
Ms. Godek?
Yes.
Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Gentili?
Yes.
Dr. Wong?
Abstain.
Next, a motion for the minutes of October 23rd, please.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Knoll?
Yes.
Ms. Atrop?
Yes.
Ms. Weltman?
Abstain.
Ms. Godek?
Yes.
Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Gentili?
Yes.
Dr. Wong?
Yes.
Thank you. Moving on, this is the third reading of Ordinance 2024-36, dealing with the composition of the codified ordinances of Pepper Pike. Steve,
Sure.
could you remind us
Yeah,
what it is?
the only change here was we scratched out subsection C, which had been the intention of the ordinance all along. That's the change since you saw this last. And subsection C would be inconsistent with the rest of what the ordinance provides. Because we're getting rid of the administrative lieutenant.
Anything else? Any conversation about it, or we'll have a vote? Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Knoll?
Yes.
Ms. Atrop?
Yes.
Ms. Weltman?
Yes.
Ms. Godek?
Yes.
Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Gentili?
Yes.
Dr. Wong?
Yes.
I apologize. We're still having an administrative
Yeah.
lieutenant. It's just we're
Five.
going to have a fifth sergeant, right?
Does that change anyone's vote? All right. Moving on to ordinance 2024-38. This is on for first reading tonight, requesting the cooperation of the county of Cuyahoga with our road improvements and declaring an emergency. Don, you want to?
This is the, we discussed this quite a bit about Cuyahoga County providing approximately $800,000 towards the resurfacing of Gates Mills Boulevard. So this is the legislation that needs to be in place for us to get that funding.
They're coming through.
They are coming through as promised, yes.
So my question on page 2 after traffic, the paragraph beginning, the unwarranted regulatory signage. What is that refer to?
Let's say you had a sign, a speed limit 25 miles an hour. It's not warranted. That would be a sign that would have to come out.
Do we have that?
No, we don't have any unwarranted signs.
So that's just standard.
Just standard, you know,
Okay.
sometimes towns try to restrict things that they're not really allowed to do.
Okay.
So they just want to make sure that everything's cleaned up.
Okay. So we don't have any, but okay.
We don't
All right.
have-
Where is that?
Bottom
End of
in section
page
5
2.
traffic, the 5th paragraph, it's just unwarranted. It made it sound like we had unwarranted signage. And, yeah.
No, I think they want to make sure that all the signs are current, up to date.
Yeah.
If we had even just an old sign that doesn't comply to the current manual, it would need to be replaced.
Excellent. Yeah. Okay.
So that means in compliance with the
Right.
ODOT, or
Right. Oh, yeah.
doesn't mean unwarranted just in the general.
No, that's a specific term of art.
Right. Correct.
You determine there's a
There
warrant
is a
for
warrant
either a
process
stop
for the
sign or
signs.
traffic light.
Got it.
That's the term of art for
Yeah.
getting a signage.
Yes.
Called being warranted.
Warrant, like a warrant for a signal or a stop sign. You
Really?
can, yes, get a warrant.
Okay.
And we do need stinking warrants.
Stinking.
I have a few questions.
Treasurer.
On
I'm sorry.
page 2,
I understood the reference.
under maintenance, that say the city will maintain blah, 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 permit no signs. Is that no signs at all? I see where the posters, billboards, roadside stands and all that, but should it be like no private signs? Something specific? What if you had a traffic sign?
I'm sorry, where are you, Scott?
Paragraph
On
beginning
maintenance.
four.
Section 4, third paragraph.
It's all in the right of way though, right? So
Yeah, this is really very, very standard language. So I know we're trying to look for things, but let's say a business stuck a sign in the right of way. They'd say no signs in the right of way.
I do understand that, yeah, but does that mean there can be no signs whatsoever?
No, it does not.
Where does a traffic sign go?
No, those are warranted. So we're back to that.
And don't lose sight of the fact that it says private installations within the right of way. So this is not governmental action that they're prohibiting.
or other private installations. Okay,
Oh,
Okay.
because that's what Scott was saying, private.
that's horrible drafting, but
Yes.
Also, that the form of that is at the top, it says that upon completion, blah, 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 shall be as follows, colon, then you have 1, 2, 3 sentences that start with the, and then the last one starts with that. And it looks to me to be the same form as the other. So should that be the?
This is a form of this ordinance that is provided to us by our granting authority, the county, as to how they drafted this, and this is how, grammatically, you may be exactly correct. But this is their language.
And it's also incorrect in the next section 5 that you've got that and then a colon and the rest of them are all that. They should be the. I'll just say it for the record.
I do not object.
and Rick is telling you dissent will not be tolerated
by the county.
By
When
the county.
when you
By the
take the
county.
king's shilling,
Thank
you
you.
take the king's grammar as the king writes it.
On page 3, under right-of-way, city will arrange for the acquisition of any additional right-of-way which may be required for the construction of the project. How is that done?
There is none acquired, so there's nothing to worry about. This is, again, is standard.
part of the
language.
draft?
They probably pass 100 of these a year.
Okay.
For any road type.
Okay. I think that's all I have. Yep, that's all the grammar I have.
Thank you, Scott, the grammarian. No. Appreciate it. Could we have a motion to suspend?
So moved.
Second,
Roll call, please.
Mr. Newell?
yes.
Ms. Zatra?
Yes.
Ms. Weltman?
Yes.
Ms. Godek?
Yes.
Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Gentili?
Yes.
Dr. Wong?
Yes.
And a motion for the adoption of ordinance 38, please.
So moved.
Any further discussion? Hearing any, roll call, please.
Mr. Newell?
Yes.
Ms. Zatra?
Yes.
Ms. Weltman?
Yes.
Ms. Godek?
Yes.
Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Gentili?
Yes.
Dr. Wong?
Yes.
Thank you for your cooperation. Next, we turn to Resolution 39. Joe, you want to take us through what
Sure.
we're doing here?
Thanks, Mayor. This resolution is just another annual resolution that we passed relating to real estate taxes. There's a first half settlement and a second half settlement. First half generally occurs in March, second half generally occurs for the final piece of the second half in September. But starting in January, they start giving us advances that work towards that final. If we don't pass this resolution, we'll get nothing till March. If we don't pass it, we'll get nothing for the second half till September. So they're giving us some money as they go.
Pass this every year, right?
Yep.
Yeah, this is an annual measure we see.
The only question I have is, could we pass a standing resolution to get our cash flow as quickly as possible?
County won't accept that. The county statute is written in a way that the county can only act. They're not a home rule authority. Actually, they are now, but I don't know. It's an interesting question, but I'm certain they're taking the position that they've always done it this way, and everybody sends a resolution. I'm not sure it's worth fighting over.
I won't fight over it. It's just a waste of time.
It is. You're exactly right. There's a theoretical basis by which they could accept a standing ordinance or whatever, but it's never been tested, I'd say.
I mean, I can't imagine the circumstances where we wouldn't want our cash flow as soon as possible.
Right.
Any further discussion? Can we have a motion for the adoption of the resolution?
So moved.
Second,
Roll call, please.
Mr. Knoll?
yes.
Ms. Atruk?
Yes.
Ms. Weltman?
Yes.
Ms. Godin?
Yes.
Mr. Lemay?
Yep.
Mr. Gentili?
Yes.
And Dr. Wong?
Yes.
Okay. Next, we come to you with what I hope is a fun motion for everybody. This is, as you see, we've had really some stunning success, I think, with the Lander Trail / sidewalk, and as well as the multi-purpose trail. The use has just been frequent and many. So as we advance into next year, what we're looking to do is let Don get underway with his evaluation of Shaker and South Woodland. South Woodland being only from Lander to Pine Tree, because we can't really deal with Lander to Brainerd now because of the future sewer project that's going in there. So we need to authorize Don to spend some of his time evaluating it, just like he did with Lander, so that he'll know he can recommend which side of the street he goes on, things like that. So
This should be design, not bid, right?
right, well, ultimately he's going to bid it,
I know,
but
but
we're going to be back in front of council before that.
so it should say design.
I agree. I believe that's
Okay.
how we did the process for
Right.
Lander.
Yeah,
Was that we
okay.
broke it up.
But it just, I like that you had this great rubric on which side of the street
Mhm.
Right,
criteria.
right.
So you're gonna do that,
Same thing.
and then you're gonna do design.
Right, we would come in front of council, talk about the location, and then once we decide the side, then we do the detailed design based on that side of the street.
So at this point, you want permission to do the study, so to speak, right?
Well, the study and the design are tied together because there's some surveying and some things that go on to
Okay.
give us, so I can give good information.
Just
The design process, and I wouldn't go further than making the recommendation.
We're not going to bid until we're back here. I have no objection to the word bid not being
Yeah.
here. I think it would be easier to do it now, but it's fine for it not to be a bid. It's part of, it's a caption in the document. But I understand,
Yeah.
your concern but a motion for him to study, evaluate, and design
Yeah.
the roadway. He has to be
Yeah,
able to.
let's call it what it is. And
Yeah, and just my point is more that the transparency on the side of the road process was really good.
Mhm.
And people will be very interested in that again. So having that as step one.
Right.
And then step two is design, and then we have numbers at that point,
Yeah,
and then step three is bid, right? As long as we're understanding that's how
We're just leaving the bid part out at this point.
Right.
Okay.
but there'll be the first time back to council on side of the road. And then we'll authorize design work,
detailed design, yeah.
detailed design,
Right.
and then we'll have a just authorized bid. Just,
Yeah.
as long as that's,
Your code has two separate provisions. One is for the authorization for design, the other is for public bidding. You routinely, for like the road programs and stuff like that, authorize, because you're doing it every year, you're going to design and bid as a single motion. Nothing prohibits you from exercising that authority under the ordinance in two steps. So
I think for the Lander, we did the design first, And we did a separate one on the bid, and I,
Yeah.
more comfortable.
We did.
We did.
More
What I'm
comfortable
saying is
doing that.
perfectly legally
There's
permissible.
no issue here. Don has quite capable of doing it this way, and yeah.
Right. Just one comment on, I think the sidewalks are great, and they blended in because they're not bright light. Better than I thought they would, actually. My only comment is there's a little more meander than I thought there'd be. And I'm more concerned about that on the next road, because Lander, you're crowded with telephone poles, and you just,
It's more obstacles.
so I don't, that's an aesthetic judgment. I don't know if anybody else has that.
I
A little, I still like the meander. I want to meander, but it was just a little more meanderish than I thought.
And I thought there were some places where it meanders, where there doesn't seem to be an obvious reason why it meanders.
So less
It's
meandering.
interesting. We were talking in our household that we thought the meandering was perfect. And I'm serious. It's not, I just didn't make it. It's just a little bit, but it's not the crazy like other certain communities nearby.
Right. So I just to get feedback to Don, you guys like the meander, or is it a little less
I
meander?
would wish for less personally,
Yeah.
but it's.
I vote
acceptable.
perfect.
And I would say there are just a few spots where I think
Mhm.
it maybe is a little too much. And I think that's what people are noticing. My hope is that, like, there is, like, for example, one spot where there are some telephone poles and it creates this meander. I'm hoping we don't have that. I don't love that people are having to dodge these poles anyway.
I can understand those, but there's some
Safety-
places
for
where there
safety
aren't
reasons.
poles and it just seems to meander
Okay.
anyway.
Well, that will be good that we can have a pass looking at it, if we can have a good.
Okay.
Yeah. it
Well,
was
why
hard
don't we
to
let
tell.
him do his engineering is my suggestion.
Exactly.
And, sometimes when you think there's not an obstacle, there may be other issues going on so far as what's underground, what the topography is, to try to make sure that this thing remains as level as possible without making it dramatic. So that's why he's surveying and doing a lot.
And I think we're keyed in to ask those questions now that we've seen it, which is kind of nice. We'll be able to look at it
Right.
a little differently with a little bit more experience, which I'm really happy about.
Dr. Wong?
I have a question. Where's all the soil going to go? Because with these, once we do it, should we kind of coordinate things? Because right now there's 2 piles of mounds on the north side of Gates Mills that came up because of the extension and everything, which is fine. But it kind of looks like a work zone, and we don't want to keep moving dirt around. So should we think about a grand plan for where all this valuable topsoil goes, and perhaps design something for where it goes to?
Yes. I think
And
there's,
coordinate.
yeah, there was an opportunity for the Ursuline piece
Right.
to capture that really good material
Mhm.
and keep it at a very low cost. If we were to try to buy that material,
Right.
it's pretty expensive. So the city saved quite a bit of money by finding a spot on Gates Mills that made sense, at least for a rough grade plan. And actually the service department kind of fine tuned that, and it looks pretty nice. We picked areas that we thought made sense for some future path location. We don't have funding for that path yet,
Right.
but if and when it goes in, we want to make sure we put it in areas where the path can still work around that. I think prior to doing any additional path, we'll have to bid it both ways. We typically get a price to haul the material off and a price to leave it in town, especially if it's really good material. And we were able to do that and use it in certain spots on Gates Mills Boulevard. I know, talking to MKSK, they were thrilled that we were able to capture that material. They didn't have it in their budget because it would have cost hundreds of thousands of dollars for some of that material that we were able to take advantage of. It's really kind of a win-win for the city. We're using really good material,
Right.
staying in town. We're not paying to haul it off or paying to bring other material in. But I think to your point, we will have to have a little bit of a rough master plan for
Right.
some key spots where we know we're going to want to put material.
So then should we start thinking about like design with MKSK or whatever to coordinate things so that we're not moving piles around and wasting money and reseeding and doing all this stuff, and so it doesn't
Yeah, I
look so.
I think it's an engineering exercise, not necessarily the landscape architect exercise,
Oh,
but
okay.
that's something that we could discuss as far as doing some preliminary stuff on the next piece of Gates Mills Boulevard, or if there's other spots in the city that we want to maybe utilize that material.
Okay.
So I have two questions. One, how many homes are we still waiting for sewer tie-ins on Shaker? Like what, do we have kind of a number of how many, like in looking at sidewalks there, if that infrastructure project isn't really complete, that everybody's tied in yet? Like where are we at with that and how would that affect a sidewalk project there?
I don't have a total right now.
Okay.
It's a good point. It's probably in the range of a dozen or so that haven't tied in yet.
Okay, so a fairly low,
Yeah.
Number,
Of
okay.
the 80, 88, I think probably at least somewhere in the 60s have tied in,
Okay.
maybe a little higher than that.
okay.
There's people literally tying in right now. So
And one other question I had, because it was surprising to me, and maybe I missed it, was the idea of a sewer project on part of South Woodland. I was under the impression that the streets that we were proposing to the community, that they were ready to receive sidewalks, and it sounds like that area wasn't. And I'm just like, I don't know if I missed something or if something changed with the engineering. Or I don't know if the rest of council was aware that that project wasn't
yeah, maybe we
quite
didn't
where it needed to be.
connect things, but we did get a grant from Regional Sewer District for about $2 million.
Okay.
And that is for that chunk of South Woodland between Lander and Brainerd.
Is that 2B or is that something
It's
completely
it's
different?
totally
Okay.
different than
Ah.
the Shaker
Okay.
branch. So that is new. That funding has not yet officially come in front of council. There will be, it comes out in January. I think that's just the way the Regional Sewer District funding works. We will have the ability to accept those funds sometime in January.
And there are no sewers on that whole South Woodland?
There are no sewers on that stretch of South Woodland, correct?
And is that the only,
Other side of Lander though, they're
Yes,
good.
yep.
is that the only remaining part of South Woodland? Even further down that has no sewers? To Som?
No, not to Som. It stops right at Pine Tree.
So it'll stop at Pine Tree, but will be both sides of Lander from Brainerd. When we complete this, we'll be up to Pine Tree,
You mean east and west of Lander?
east and west.
Yes.
Yes.
With the exception of that small piece. Okay, that's pretty good.
Don, do we know when we applied for the grant for the other Gates Mills?
Yes.
Do we know when that might be awarded?
ODNR is, they've taken a long time for whatever reason in determining, we used to get good information somewhere around October or November. If you recall, there was one time where they awarded the grants in February the following year, but the new grant applications were due March
Yeah.
15th or whatever. So I'm hoping that we find out shortly.
So real quick, just circling back to the potential sewer project on South Woodland, timeline for that would be
That, well, once we get the grant, then we have to go through the design process. There's an assessment process. Let's, in the perfect world.
Sure.
We get that funding. The design is probably all of 25, with the most aggressive construction would be sometime in, mid 26.
Okay, I think it's important, like knowing that has perhaps changed, to communicate it to that area of the community, because I know that there are people who are very much looking forward to the project and knowing that there are delays because of infrastructure improvements, which grant money, and that is awesome. I am very supportive of that. But just, kind of getting that information out there.
Sure.
So thanks for the explanation, Don. I appreciate
How
it.
many homes about?
I want to say it's 88 again.
Again?
Oddly enough, I think.
Is that our magic number?
I don't know what it works.
And just curious, because I know Shaker was a complicated project. The sewer was not where you would think a sewer would be. It was kind of somewhere in the middle of the road,
Right.
if I recall. Not exactly in the middle either. Is that a problem here, or is it a simpler project? Do we know?
It's, there's more right of way to work with.
Okay.
Shaker was about 60 foot of right of way. South Woodland Road is 100 feet wide right of way. So
Okay.
there is space to accommodate a lot of things.
Because they were working right in the middle of Shaker at some point, because the
Yeah.
sewer was in an odd, Like.
Yeah, the
like
reason for that,
historical-
yeah.
It's a historical issue, right?
Well, you can't put a sanitary sewer within a certain number of feet of the water line or
Sure.
the storm line. And we also had the conflict with the existing telephone poles that were sitting on top of the old
Gotcha.
storm line. So really, the only logical place was to put it in one of the lanes of the street. Had we put it down the middle, you wouldn't be able to drive on either side of it. So we kind of had to
I remember.
had to hug one side so that you could drive on the other
I have a
side.
good memory of that, clear memory. So just so I understand, will this also be in the street? Will we be repaving also?
South Woodland, I really don't think it'll be in the street.
Okay,
There will be some crossings that may cross the street, so
Okay.
we would time it up ultimately with the resurfacing of South.
resurface, okay. Good to know.
One more question related to the design of the sidewalks on Shaker and South Woodland. Will we have a final report on the costs and everything as it relates to Lander and the first section of Gates Mills
Mhm.
soon, so that we kind
Yeah,
of understand?
really, right. Both of those
How it's
contracts are just about closed out. Not closed out, but essentially almost all the money has been spent. Lander, we're going over punch list items right now. The trail portion of Gates Mills Boulevard, not the landscaping portion, but the
Mhm.
trail alone, everything but the concrete ramps essentially the curb ramps is done.
Okay.
So that, they really, both of those projects really were right on schedule, which was
Okay, well,
and I'll have the dollars to Joe here in the probably next month or so.
okay, so I'd like to see how that works out before we go too much farther down the line with the others.
Yeah, and as of right now, I don't have exact numbers, but we're
Yeah.
below the bid award numbers on both of them.
Okay, great.
While we're talking about the trails, Don, I noticed there's some trees that are being put in or about, I don't know, but we do have a warranty on those trees, right? If
Yes,
they die.
it's warranted a couple of different ways. Through the landscaper has a warranty on it, and then we also have a maintenance bond on the overall contract of all of the work that goes in.
And what's that warranty like for 2 years, 1 year, or not like 6 weeks?
No. It's over a year.
Okay.
So, yeah, and it's a year from when they're completing the project. They won't be complete until the spring of next year. And so we've really got the spring of 26 would be the one.
And the trees they're putting in now are maples and oaks, or?
It's a variety of trees. There's, I think, 10 or 12 different species, but some are maples and some are oaks.
I think somewhere we have a specification of all, when we were
Right,
looking
that's
at
right.
all the trees,
Yeah.
which was really,
I'm just worried because it's supposed to snow like in the next couple of days.
I know,
No,
and
no.
that was my other question, but some of the plantings are going in the spring. So the project won't be,
Right, but the trees that are currently there going in the ground, I just
They
worry.
they are A-okay.
Okay,
The
right.
ground's not going to freeze for a long time.
okay.
So, and that's where the roots are, and that's how the trees are. They're actually, it's kind of at the perfect time to be planting them.
and I think at one meeting, there was a conversation where we talked about kind of shortly before the warranty expires, going and doing kind of a review assessment of everything so we can make sure we get replacement on any trees or
Yeah.
plantings.
I'm working with Jim as well in service to come up with a really nice inventory of every tree in exact location. If, even if one of them gets damaged by a deer or
Mm.
whatever, we'll be able to replace the same species and know exactly what got damaged too.
And to anticipate any question, there will be deer guarding,
Oh, good.
encasing the trunks of these young trees.
Jim's going to patrol at night.
So if you hear a lot of loud bangs, don't call
I
Carl.
just want to close the loop on that. Those will be written reports on those two projects.
Yeah, we'll have a
Once they're done.
summary of all of the quantities and how they came out.
But in writing, not just a verbal report.
No, we'll have
Great, thank you.
Oh, not just on the trees, you mean on the full project?
On the I'm not interested in that.
Yeah, I
section
didn't
right
think you
now.
were talking
Yeah,
about the trees. I
yeah.
wanted to make sure
I'm interested in the costs and the,
on the costs and the
yeah, like a final report just to button up the projects.
budget to actual kind of.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, getting back, it was a good discussion, everyone, but let's get back to our motion to authorize the engineer to start the design process, how's that, of Shaker
Motion to
Boulevard.
amend your resolution first, Mr. Mayor? No.
Well, we're bringing it as a motion to authorize Don to engage in the design process of Shaker Boulevard and the portion of South Woodland Road between Lander and Pine Tree. Could we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? None. Roll call, please.
Mr. Newell?
Yes.
Ms. Atrop?
Yes.
Ms. Wellman?
Yes.
Ms. Godek?
Yes.
Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Gentile?
Yes.
Dr. Wong?
Yes.
Thank you very much, Council. Next, we'll move on to ordinance 2024-40. This deals with, we need to amend our erosion and sediment control ordinance. Don, you want to tell us why
Yeah,
we're seeing this?
This kind of went hand in hand with the one that was passed last month, which was our comprehensive stormwater management ordinance. This is a separate chunk that really deals with erosion and sediment control. And again, it's making more uniform language, making it easy for the contractors to follow it. And we're obligated periodically to update it. And it's very, very similar to the last one. It's just slightly different topic.
Same rationale, same justification.
Same exact thing. Yeah.
It refers to
Exhibit A?
Exhibit A, which I don't think was included.
Yeah. We don't have Exhibit
I
A.
didn't actually.
It's in section 1.
I didn't.
It references it, but
Yeah,
what is
we-
it?
Exhibit A is,
I had it. I thought I sent it over, but we'll get it.
Oh, it didn't catch up to your
No.
packets. I apologize, everyone.
Let's just defer this for next one then.
Do you need this?
Yeah, can we do a first reading?
Okay. All righty, good. We'll get that section added to everyone.
the format of the ordinance looks a little wonky too,
Is this
at
just
least the way it's
a
printed from my
template that they
printer.
gave us, a formatted, pre-formatted?
Okay. Moving on then to ordinance 2024-41. This amends section 220.01A of our ordinances. This is the meeting ordinance that council has been discussing. I'd open it for, it's here for first reading tonight. I'd open it for discussion.
I think it says what we expected it to say.
Okay. I do want to point out for council that, on its face, there's certainly, I can try to certainly be at these meetings Tuesdays, first Tuesday, third Tuesday. It can create some staffing issues, just so that no one is, surprised by it if that occurs. I know it's Chief Frazier's day off. On Tuesdays, our clerk of council has to do payroll every other week, and she has a vacation schedule also. Obviously, she can't miss her payroll week here. That's critical for the city. And these meetings, at least one, the second one will fall in a payroll week. So am I saying it right?
No, it just, one week's a meeting, the next one's a payroll, next one's a meeting. I'm gonna have to miss something, and I can't miss the payroll, so I may end up missing a few meetings next year.
Okay. We're not going to take your vacation away
But
from you.
I don't vote, so that's a good thing. So-
Okay. Well, I just want council to be aware of, it's like anything with old plumbing. You shake it here and you're going to leak over there.
So is there any way to cover that?
I think we'll be fine. If I'm not here. I don't know about John.
Okay. I just wanted to be upfront that, there could be potential shakeouts from it, but it's council schedule. You get to set your schedule, obviously.
How about the other department heads?
I don't know that they're,
Bowling.
it kind of crunches into anyone's vacation schedules, I think, because it kind of stops anyone from taking a 2-week vacation as opposed to a 1-week vacation in between. But, that's something we'll just deal with. It's a different planning issue for people, I think.
What is a 2-week vacation?
Great question, Scott.
Maybe not in the news industry. That doesn't stop for 2 weeks.
If they can't get their story done, they ask for a continuance.
I think with any new process, it's like there's always
Right.
going to be challenges and everything, but I believe that we can overcome it. And I'm hoping that the positive effect of us having a every other week cadence for these meetings is really going to outweigh any other scheduling challenges. So I'm glad that we've come to this point.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the calendar when you said that. I think it still works if some people have a 2-week vacation in there to do it. It just depends where in the calendar you're working it, so.
Okay. Good.
I think it would
show
be
you
a
how it
tragedy if
works.
somebody was at only one meeting in 1 month because of the vacation schedule,
Which has happened
except you,
anyways.
of course.
It was really our clerk who I was more concerned about.
Well, payroll is important.
That is important.
Okay. All right, then. I didn't want to proceed. It's on for first reading tonight. We can suspend. We can hear it again. I think you're ready to do it.
I think there's nothing else, right?
I'm ready.
Okay.
Motion to suspend?
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Knoll,
Yes.
Ms. Atrop,
Yes.
Ms. Weltman,
Yes.
Ms. Godik,
Yes.
Mr. Lemay,
Yes.
Mr. Gentili.
Yes.
Dr. Wong.
Yes.
Understand section 4 does say this starts in January. Everybody understands?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
And a motion for adoption of 41.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Knoll,
Yes.
Ms. Atrop,
Yes.
Ms. Weltman,
Yes.
Ms. Godik.
Yes.
Mr. Lemay.
Yes.
Mr. Gentili.
Yes.
Dr. Wong.
Yes.
Okay. We'll move on then to Resolution 2024-42. Joe, you want to tell us why we should accept money or not?
Basically, same thing, similar to the other resolution we passed tonight. This is an annual resolution setting the various rates for the amount of millage for the various funds. We do it on an annual basis. And we get it sent off. Sheila sends it off to the county and everything's hunky-dory.
Remind me, John, inside and outside. Inside doesn't require a vote, outside requires a vote, right?
Correct.
That's the distinction.
That's the main distinction.
Okay. Can I hear a motion motion to adopt the resolution?
So moved.
Second?
Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Knoll.
Yes.
Ms. Atrop.
Yes.
Ms. Weltman.
Yes.
Ms. Godik.
Yes.
Mr. Lemay.
Yes.
Mr. Gentili.
Yes.
Dr. Wong.
Yeah.
Great. Next is an item that I thought we ought to at least initiate a discussion about because it seems to be an ongoing, phenomenon in the city that we need to, I think, affirmatively deal with up or down. Right now, when a new house or a knockdown, so basically a new house on a lot, is going up, the city requirement is that there be one tree in the front yard. And what that allows are some builders to basically clear cut a lot of established old trees. Now, obviously, their argument is always, well, I need to clear these trees in order to build a home. And none of us would have a home in Pepper Pike if no one had ever cut down, if no trees had been cut down on our lots when they were originally constructed. You have to cut down trees.
Where is this located, just so I know? It's in the building code,
It's in
In the building code.
it's in the building code, okay.
Well, he's looking that up.
It's going to be the
So people come to the ABR with questions about or designs. And if it's a new home, they have more input into the siting issue somehow. And I know Don tries to protect the trees along the pole and not have unnecessary cutting occur. But by the time they're done, even preserving the perimeter trees, sometimes in my eye, sometimes the appearance of a front yard can be pretty naked looking with, one sapling stuck in there if they've clear cut the whole thing and replaced it with what's often not even hardwood. It's some small deciduous, fir that they've put in there. I just thought we ought to have a conversation. If doesn't have to conclude tonight by any means.
Mayor, on New Brainerd, as you go north, there are a couple of houses going in there. You've probably seen them. It looks like they cut a lot of trees there. Would this have been affected by, would that have
How
saved?
many they would have cut, I don't think this would affect. How many they have to, at the end of the process, have in that front yard area. That's what that is what I'm talking about. So far as preserving unnecessary cutting, I think we deal with that we deal with it as best as we can. People get to design and build a house. We can't tell them not to build a house because you're going to take down, 2 more trees than we want to see. But at the end of the road, I think we do have the ability to say, something has to be in this front yard. I drive by some new homes and I have a hard time identifying if and where there's this single tree. And actually, some builders are very responsible with this, and they've left, a healthy little copse of trees in the front yard. It's an established yard, and there's a lot of things going on. Others, I don't know if it's easier for them simply to bulldoze the whole thing, and they can move their equipment in and out. They can put in their underground. They don't have to worry about a thing.
Well, that's what we've heard in the
And-
past, that they say it's necessary.
Yeah, and there's a difference between necessary and what you want to, as a builder, I think, to overcome in order to put in maybe a little more expense, figure out the yard a little more, the terrain. And Don may have different feelings about some of this for all I know, but so far as a design issue.
But is this a part of not cutting down existing trees or adding new?
Adding. I want to make sure that there is some, in my view, and that's why it's a discussion. What I want isn't going to be determinative here. I would like to aspire to having more than a single tree being necessary planted in someone's front yard.
Isn't it
Just so I
isn't the
understand.
ordinance?
What I'm finding is the subdivision regulations require, if you're putting in a new street, you need 1 tree for every 70 feet of street that go in. So the idea is new developments are going to have treed streets, and there are specifications for what that is. So it's more than just 1 tree in new subdivisions. Now, we're not getting a lot of those. What I haven't found yet is a requirement for, on a single already developed site, a contractor to put trees in.
And I may be wrong. I am reciting, I did not do a ordinance research. I've been told this, and it alarms me when I hear
And I
it.
think it's a fair point, like what we see even on planning and zoning, when people are doing a big renovation, so a big addition or a tear down in a house, which I don't know if this would count or not, it is new construction. We see a lot of clear cutting of the lots. I'm assuming because it's easier as opposed to the only way to do it. And even on some houses that, it's a good question. Is there a way that we could make sure that there's at least more landscaping and some trees even of a certain caliber put in to kind of maintain the aesthetic? And then the other question that goes with it, though, that I always think of with these things, which I value and I think we should do, is making sure it actually happens. Because if there's no enforcement and no follow-up, it's meaningless, right? It's impossible. And so we have to be willing to invest a little bit of resources. And I don't know that it's that much, but when there's a new construction or a major maybe renovation along with the permitting, have these requirements and then make sure they actually do what they are.
Well, and as I
So-
recall, one of the issues here is we have in the past, Mayor, you may remember this, tried to impose some pretty steep fines for cutting certain trees down. And that, am I remembering it correctly, or maybe Steve, you can help, that the state has put a limit on that?
Well, you run into an issue if they get a permit for doing forestry maintenance. I don't know if you have any properties that are large enough that are engaged in that type of program, but, taking down a tree, we do have a tree preservation ordinance that is different than construction situations. The other thing to remember is some people may want a yard for their kids to play ball in or something like that, and it's hard to do that with trees. So it's not uncommon to see people who want a yard to say, I want a front yard here, we'll landscape it, we'll put trees here and there, but I want the kids to be able to play either in the front or the back, which is going to necessitate taking down trees. The other thing is that there's some goofy law, the mayor's familiar with it, where the Sixth Circuit has said things, I think Jim has seen it also.
Taking.
Yeah, you run into a takings problem if you try to prohibit taking trees down at all, because the trees are part of the property that are owned by the property owner. So I understand that there are concerns regarding it. I have yet to see a good implementation of it that's been upheld, and I think it's worth talking about to figure out what is the policy. It's really tough to have people here. There may be people in the city who want to be able to take down trees so that they have space to use their yard for whatever purpose.
We have an acre minimum, so it's not like we're devoid of space on those lots anyways. I mean, it's a decent sized lot. It's not like we're in, Mayfield Heights that they're
Well,
an eighth of an acre.
to Steve's point, a lot of houses, at least in my neighborhood, they have a creek running behind them, and so they have zero backyard.
Right.
And that's when you see the lacrosse goal set up in the front yard, because there's no place else to throw a ball.
Right.
So I get that. But don't we have, for a new construction, don't we have a site plan required?
Yeah.
And as part of that site plan, cannot we say,
There is a tree regulation ordinance that's in place that the building inspector is responsible for.
Yeah.
So as part of the administrative process of reviewing the site plan and so forth, he's going to be looking at whether or not they're preserving trees. They're supposed to identify the trees they're going to preserve, and they're supposed
as
to
part
take
of site
steps.
plan approval?
Yeah.
Right, and Paul is pretty effective in, I don't want to use the word aggressive, but he is assertive in following up on these site plans and responding to residents who might say, gee, something's going on in this building site. Now, it can't be permitted. Paul is quick to respond to those things, and he checks it out with the plan. And sometimes it's just fine, and sometimes there's been an overstep. And he addresses that when that occurs.
Is there, though, there's nothing you can do after the fact, obviously. If somebody cuts it, then they
Which is
pay
your
a fine, and
penalty
it's a minimal fine, isn't it?
Well, and to that point, I know he's probably trying to do some of this, but I just received a call yesterday from a young family who I think has lived here only a few years, and their neighbor cut a lot of trees, and I think it was allowed, and they in the far back. So not, after there was permitting for the house and a site plan and all that, they came back, and it's more complicated of a story, but they were very, very upset. I mean, they were very upset. And, and they had just invested a lot of money in their house. And I drove by, and it did look pretty cleared. And I think one of them was a really big, healthy tree. So, I don't know. I think we have to give Paul more backup. If we're going to do something like this, more backup that he can really enforce it, and that, and that we're serious about this. If that's something we are capable of doing legally, that's the other question.
Yeah.
And sometimes people go, right now we have you can take up to 4 trees down a year, plus those trees that are diseased, dead, etc. And in the after the fact situations, because I've talked to Paul about this, is sometimes he'll go out to the site because it's now after the fact. That, a call, I wish
It
they'd
happened
call,
at the country club that we,
Right.
and how are we?
and
to
it's
say which
like,
trees were
okay,
good?
and we dealt affirmatively with them that you're gonna be planting a lot of trees, and they did.
But we couldn't say at that point which trees were healthy. We could look at an aerial map, I
Right,
remember.
Right, and they even ground the stumps down, if I recall. So that was a challenging situation. But you need, when it's after the fact, sometimes it's hard to identify, was this diseased or not? And, or dying or dead.
Well,
I just wanted, I don't mean to conclude anything here tonight. I just wanted to get people thinking about it, and I'll be talking to Paul about it more.
I think more trees are better within reason, right? And so I guess I'm curious if we control cutting down through site plan or excessive cutting down through site plan. The flip side of that is what requiring a planting of more
X
trees.
X number of trees, right?
So it's not destroying existing, it's planting some. And where would that authority lie?
And that's where we have to be careful of the Sixth Circuit decision too.
No, we're requiring a landscaping. We're not prohibiting them.
Taking them down.
But I'm sorry, there's two sides to this one. I thought we already have good regulations on the taking down of trees. True or
Wow.
false?
Which have their problems.
You have an ordinance.
We have an
But it's
ordinance.
not, I don't know.
It needs
that
to be enforced. But you're asking for something different here is,
I'm asking as to whether or not, and Don, are you more familiar? I don't know why I've been told that we have this one tree thing. I didn't go
I don't
do
know where
a
that-
research project about it.
I don't know where that's coming from. I know that,
I think that's the ABR suppression too.
again, I don't.
Maybe
know
it
where
comes
that's
from
coming
what Steve is saying.
It's one tree per 70
If
feet.
there's
when
one
you're
tree
doing
per
a new
70
but that's in
subdivision.
a subdivision.
It's street trees, you
Yeah.
build the,
We will never
Or
have
maybe
another
they
subdivision.
simply need some counseling regarding where the law is then, Steve.
And,
So
and I,
so that they're more confident as to what the rule is.
I would wonder if there would be some type of incentive, like if you were, okay, say we had a minimum of 10 trees for new construction in a front yard. And those trees are expensive to install and put in. What if the builder were to leave X number of trees on that lot, not completely clear cut it, which would give them kind of a credit towards a couple of those trees to install? Like, is there a way to have a preservation plan that you don't have clear cutting of the lot by giving the incentive that then you don't have to plant as many trees? Like, would there be an opportunity for that to kind of encourage those established trees to stay, still getting additional trees to improve the tree canopy and maintain our tree city status, and kind of control that in a healthier way? Just a thought. I don't know if it's even possible,
It's not a bad idea.
but just like an incentive to not cut. Because if you cut, then you have to install more.
Well, that's where we
Is-
ran into the Sixth Circuit problem. I'm trying to play out in my head. what
And
you're
it's not that
saying.
you're not allowed to. You're like, you can still, if you choose to clear cut it, then you still have to plant those 10 trees. But if you choose not to, maybe you only have to put up 6. And so it's not a prevention. It's not completely controlling it. It's just a nicer suggestion. So just a
Didn't we
thought.
bump into this when we did the amendment on the institutional land, on the site plan stuff, that we were gonna say, if you take down a tree, you have to
Yeah.
put 2 in or 3 in, and there's something ultimately, I think, that you were counseling doesn't work with that idea.
the problem with that is that where do you put them? I mean, you're going to have them all built in on top of each other.
Well, can you do tree credits, like you do energy credits, I guess? Would be an idea. Plant them somewhere else. Doesn't really solve the aesthetic issue.
Steve, I have a question for the tree
I-
preservation ordinance, the 1494.05, section A, it says regulations pertaining to all developments except the U1 single family district. Can't we just remove that except and then it'll apply to everything?
No, there's a separate set of rules for U1.
Right, I see that in section B, but it doesn't have where, number 4, where the existing trees of 8 inches or greater shall be preserved unless removal is approved by the planning commission. And then the number, type, and location of replacement trees will be determined, So, or should we just add that into
The
B?
U1 is subject to the subdivision regulations, and that's where you will find the tree regulations for that. That's the one that requires a tree every 70 feet of frontage. So,
What section is that?
so this is not
B?
individual properties. This is a U1 development that we're talking about.
So where's the individual property one? We don't have one?
B. So B has the regulations pertaining to the development in a U1 single-family district.
But then why don't we also have number 4 and B where the replacement trees are there? If you can have it in A. If it's legally allowed to have it in A, why can't you put it in B?
What code section again?
1494.05 tree preservation. I can give it to you if you want.
I'm looking down here, and there is.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. I think it has to do with the nature of, U1 development doesn't have the same tree removal requirements because you don't have the parking lots and the other stuff. So you're allowed to take down trees if you're going to be driveways where the
All right.
building's going to go, that sort of thing, storm sanitary
Right.
sewers and so forth. You're not supposed to be taking any other trees. So, I mean, that almost requires people not to have a backyard of grass because this prohibits that. You're not supposed to take any trees down if you're not in those areas.
All right. So we should just revise B to
Well, listen, I think I need some more precision in my own head as to
Yeah,
what this
What do we
is,
really need here?
what this
I think
is.
we should
I
continue
didn't think it
this.
was going to be this challenging
We
even
were
to
talking
find what
about
I
it when the
told.
country club took a bunch of trees down, but then we abandoned it because legally we didn't think we could enforce it and do it.
Right, right. So let me, I'm glad we began the discussion so that it's not going to be unfamiliar to anyone as we progress with the conversation. But let me speak to Paul and the ABR members also as to what it is that's grinding away here that's a concern. And I'll refine, where I am, in my understanding of this, and I'll come back to council. Okay?
And I'd just like to add that when we have that discussion, I would love, because I know that, and it could change. In recent years, we've had a lot of building, some new builds and additions. If we need more support to talk about inspecting and enforcing like that, that's a piece of it we should talk about. It'll be short term probably, but I think we should make sure that
Yeah,
what
that's fine.
we expect is happening. So if we could add that in at some point.
Okay, good. We'll move on then. We had a planning commission meeting at the beginning of the month. Melanie, you want to report on that?
Of course. Notes, because it was already. So the last meeting, we had a community member come. They had a request for a variance. It was a setback, side setback variance on the property line for a greenhouse, so an outbuilding. They wanted to place it closer to the property line. As it was presented, there were changes by the time they came to the meeting, or at least not, I shouldn't say changes. There wasn't a lot of information. There wasn't a lot of drafting presented to us. It was kind of some pictures. George had, in his review, based on the information we had, which was, I think George talked about the specifics of what they talked about. He didn't think it was practical difficulty. However, we decided to defer And we're going to try and do a site visit. I would still love to have drawings, I think, to, first of all, just see it, a picture, and memorialize it. I'll just say that ultimately my concern is the same concern I've had from some of these previous conversations, that we don't really get to the actual legal definition of practical difficulty. We end up having a conversation of what is practically difficult to someone personally, but it's not really meeting the level of the variance ordinance. And this is something I'd really like to talk about as a council. It's not meeting the requirement of the underlying ordinance in my mind, or the variance ordinance, which I don't think we're hitting those requirements, but yet it seems that the variance is given on a number of occasions. That is my personal read.
Was there something unique about this lot that they argued practical difficulty? Like it was
They did.
topography or shape or
They
something?
did.
Well, no, they say that there's not sufficient, well, a few things. They have a lot of plantings currently in the yard or landscaping, and they don't want to destroy that. I don't know that that meets practical difficulty under the ordinance. Not that it's not something to feel concerned about, as someone who is their neighbor or friend, but it's not necessarily under the ordinance. That they don't want to see it from their bedroom because, it wouldn't be as aesthetically attractive, also in my mind, not. And finally, that there might not be sufficient sunlight to the greenhouse, which again, it gets maybe a little closer, but I am not certain. So it doesn't go to the, if you really need to read the variance ordinance, and
Well,
then
it says special conditions or unique circumstances. What are the special conditions or unique circumstances on this lot?
Well, we're not going to deliberate I don't think it's
cannot
right for the
deliberate.
people
And
to
I
deliberate their
don't mean
variance
to
requests
bring,
here.
I don't mean to bring this specific case necessarily before council. I guess it's just a thread that I've seen, and I would love to have a conversation with everybody about that, because it's a thread I have seen, and it's a concern of mine that, if we think our ordinances should be different, the variance ordinance or the underlying ordinance, that is a fair point for council to take up, or for anybody in the community to advocate to council that we should take up. But if the ordinances stand as they are, it's my belief that they should be followed and enforced. And I think it's a challenge. It's a challenge because these are all worthy people who want nice things, and they're our neighbors. But it's not fair to the people who don't question the ordinance and don't ask for a variance because they read it and they said, oh, I can't do it. Or they're, so it's just a really important question. And I think ultimately this chips away at our zoning and the aesthetic potentially in our community in a way that we didn't put this ordinance in place, but previous councils did. And I don't want to see that deteriorated without an affirmative decision to change things. I'm not advocating for changing things, but if we were going to, that's how it should happen, not kind of quietly, out of public view. I mean, it's
The
public.
danger in all these is that we grant one variance and
It
then
becomes a precedent
it become a
also.
precedent for similarly situated. And if they have no special conditions or circumstances, then it's a precedent for every lot in the city.
Yeah, and every person is, I shouldn't say every person, but most of these people are nice people who want nice things, and they're just, they're coming because they're asking for something. They don't realize. So it's not a personal attack on anybody by any means. It's just a clarification we need to make.
But the reason they
Right,
have to ask is because they could be affecting their neighbors. And that's what we have to do, is protect the neighbors. I think it'd be interesting to
Yeah, the
have,
neighbors signed off on this one.
they did.
Yes.
Okay, but in all cases, that's what we're doing.
Right,
through the
right.
zone.
And that's why I don't totally, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
That's okay.
I don't totally agree with Mr. LeMay's apprehension that you grant one and it becomes a precedent for everything else. And I am not relating it to these people because I sincerely think we should not, as a council, be deliberating their
No, that was
variance
just, I was
application
reporting
here.
out.
That
Yeah,
should not be going on.
I agree.
But more broadly, to Mr. LeMay's point, I think that any variance is very fact specific to that property and whether or not, there are the grounds, and there have to be the grounds, I don't disagree with
the councilwoman at all about that, but I don't think that the granting of any particular variance, which is fact specific to that property, creates a precedent for all other properties. If someone else, I guess, had the same relative circumstances, then that argument can be made.
But if there's
But
no
it just
special,
doesn't, oh, we let greenhouses, not to use, I can't use them as an example.
But-
We let this happen in this situation, so
Yes.
anyone with that,
Some
But if there's-
random shed.
right.
Some certain shed. So we'll refer to it as a shed. The challenge is that, to Mr. LeMay's point, there is nothing. So my reading of practical difficulty has to do with the appearance of the land that lies underneath. And also these variances, I believe, run with the land, correct? Yes. So once you do it, the neighbor can move away. The neighbor could be, absent most of the time, or a renter, or they could, it could change. And the variance, once it's in place, is there. By running with the land, it means it stays. And I mean, I'm sure everybody knows that. And my concern is that the circumstances, personal circumstances are different, and they're often very compelling personally, but that doesn't meet the standards for the variance
but
ordinance.
the
And
point is,
that's where I
if there's
find
not
the
a special
challenge.
condition or unique circumstance, it becomes a precedent.
Exactly.
There
That's,
has to be those things.
but
Whether there are those things becomes a factual
it's not-
determination.
But it's
for
not,
that
I don't want to
property.
look at this out my window.
and
That's not that.
And I've lived in, and I've been in that room with these really thoughtful members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. And there have been conversations of, we've done something similar before, or how many of these have we done before? Like with a certain type of angle to a garage, for example. So precedent does come into the conversation, interestingly. And I just think it's something that we need to maybe tighten up. I don't know, or have a conversation about whether we want to, because I think it's important, not in even individual case. Any individual case affects the neighbors. Maybe they care, maybe they don't care. Maybe the neighbors a few down who really don't have a voice in it, because it's their neighborhood. But cumulatively, it's a decision that we should be making together.
Okay,
So
I think-
that's my point.
okay, I think we're
and
well reported.
I have
regarding-
one other thing I just want to report from the previous one, because I read the minutes, and I just want to make sure I put a note in this for council. I know Steve and I talked about it. We had a previous concern with a topography change, and we have sort of this, I don't know what you call it, ordinance that somehow didn't get addressed. It's like an ordinance that, most of our ordinances on planning and zoning go to the Planning and Zoning Commission. This one had a public hearing, just a public hearing, and then it went to the building department. And the public hearing wasn't even on what ended up happening, and building inspector wasn't even there. So it was like this very strange, out of sync ordinance from who knows how many years ago when we were a village, that I think we're going to clean up, because it doesn't even, I know
Well,
the
the building
mayor,
official listened to that entire public hearing.
did we?
Oh,
did
yeah,
we-
he absolutely
He
listened.
wasn't here.
He wasn't here, but we recorded and he listened to the entire public
But the
hearing.
people who were at the public hearing couldn't even respond to what the plan was. And so there was, anyhow, the point is that we have to clean up that ordinance. It doesn't align with any of our other procedures. And it has to do with topography. That was the situation that I got a very upset call from this young couple that recently moved into the community. They seem like really nice people, and they put a lot of money into their house, and they were very distressed about what the ultimate conclusion was on this property, having to do with changing the slope of the land, and I didn't see it, and tree removal. So I just think that, this is sort of goes on both cylinders to the previous comments I made, and also, which I know Steve is all over it, looking at this ordinance and making it at least more aligned with every other zoning ordinance we have. It's
Okay.
like it somehow got forgotten, so
All right,
it's okay.
thank you. We also had a beautification committee meeting since we were last together.
Correct. The Parks and Beautification Committee held a meeting on Monday, November 18th at 7. I'm happy to report that we are planning for the future and look forward to 2025. as we have some exciting projects on the horizon. Some of these projects include hosting community programming with the intent of promoting our parks and fostering community engagement, planning a future celebration for the exciting opening of the Gates Mills Boulevard Linear Park, and setting design standards to add consistency and cohesiveness to our parks and city properties. I'll report that we had a robust discussion regarding benches. Our resident member, Rick, has been putting a lot of effort into researching potential bench designs for the Gates Mills Boulevard Linear Park. I'm hopeful we'll be bringing recommendations to council soon. We also adopted a meeting calendar for 2025 last night, for 2025, and ended the meeting with audience comments. The committee's next meeting is scheduled for January 27th of 2025. Now that the Parks and Beautification Committee has been established, we would also like to start working on a long-range plan for Pepper Pike Park to determine and understand the possible utilization and best potential project opportunities and amenities for that space with the input of a professional park planner and designer. The committee made a motion requesting that I come to council to request your support to engage with a design firm to discuss a holistic park plan. Since we both, the city and the Parks and Beautification Committee, have established a relationship with MKSK, and for the sake of consistency in design and process, we would like to suggest that we first engage with them. Therefore, I would like to ask to engage in preliminary discussions with MKSK to talk about their potential planning process, including community feedback. So I would like to ask for council's support to move forward with that project and process.
So, maybe so this is just discussions to see how their process would work.
Yeah.
And the cost of that, and then you'd come back to council with requests for a budget and permission to. And are you thinking it's just kind of ideation first? Depending if they're the right guys, right?
Yeah, I believe that MKSK will be the right guy, but I'm not opposed to looking to others if the plan that they were to suggest is not a good fit for us. But I do think for the cohesiveness, et cetera, of a plan, and it seems that they have worked well with the administration, everybody, and us.
Right.
So yeah, I would like to just go on a kind of a first step to determine what the process would be and what that would look like, and what is the ultimate, what's the ideal process, and then maybe what is the process that we would like, or is our process the ideal? Kind of the we had the aspirational plan and the other, like where does that fall, and kind of exploring that further.
Because when they were here for Gates Mills, we talked about they could do soup to nuts from community engagement all the way down to picking the final planting.
Sure.
If we wanted them. I don't know if we do, but I thought their design for the trail was really good. So
I think so. I think
supportive.
it's looking and understanding the possibilities and the visioning for that park. I think instead of like a piecemeal, we could do this project here, we could do that. What would the overall vision be? What does the community want? What are some desires, some projects that are there? Then when those grant opportunities come up, or we have it in the budget to be able to move forward, let's have that long range plan to be able to really do it. I like process. I think that this would be a good process for that park, noting that there are some desires that maybe haven't been met in projects up to this point. So
Listen, I was there and I totally support the committee's instinct to turn to MKSK.
thank you, Mayor.
Didn't we receive this proposal from MKSK about a year ago, Joe?
Money was put in the budget for 2024.
Yeah.
And MKSK, I believe, gave documentation to all the council to take a look at on different stuff that they've done within parks. And
Right.
that's where it stopped.
Okay, that's where it
We
stopped.
have rebudgeted that for 2025.
Okay.
I'd like to just say one thing.
Please.
I think, because when we originally were looking at companies to design the Gates Mills Linear Park, we interviewed several, and MKSK just stood out head and shoulders above anybody else. And they, to me, would be the first place to start. So I think your instincts are really good. And I do think it's an excellent idea to come up with a cohesive, at least general plan. So I think we should really pursue this. I think it's a good idea.
And I really like the idea of coming up with a cohesive aesthetic, having to do with things like benches and signage, and that would even lead into probably other design elements that we're not even thinking about right now, but it gives us kind of a template. And also, I love the idea, I really appreciated how they presented things and how they kind of, the back and forth process and seeing the design process. And I love the idea of kind of getting a jump on it. As you may have noticed, I don't like when things, get rushed. I think mistakes get made. And this to me is a way of avoiding some of that. So I appreciate that.
I'm supportive of your idea, Emmy, to engage with them. I think it would be in the nature of a request for a proposal. They would give us a proposal on what they would charge and what they would deliver. And I think that would be a good thing to do.
Yeah, well,
Especially given Scott's endorsement of them as standing out head and shoulders above the other vendors who came in, the other consultants who came in.
They just knew the area. They knew the sense of the area. And if you look at the Gates Mills plan they came up with, I think they really hit a home run there.
I appreciate that they live locally too.
They live locally. That's
not
the-
within Pepper Pike, but local
Right,
enough
yeah.
that they understand.
That was
the
huge
aesthetics.
when we initially interviewed them. That was huge.
I appreciate
And it really did stand out.
And I loved how they collaborated. I sat in on one meeting with community members, and the collaboration was really impressive, respectful, thoughtful. And I mean, it was an elevated, I think, level, at an elevated level.
all right, so I think that what I'm hearing is that the committee has considered it, council supporting that recommendation of the committee. It's something we've obviously supported for a year. So with all of your, being on board with it, what we'll do is we will reach out to MKSK and, push forward with engaging them. Budget-wise, I don't know if we can still do it this year. It's probably next year, but we will engage with them and, happy to involve the committee as to what's going on here. But we'll reach out to MKSK and get this underway.
So I can reach out to them also.
Absolutely.
I would like to.
Yep.
I would like to have a conversation with them.
Yeah, I
too.
said I'd involve.
Okay. I
No,
just
but-
want to make sure.
But
like,
we have to do contracting. You can't.
oh no! Of course not. That isn't my role as a committee member or as a council member.
Right.
I know where that lies, but I would like to have the conversation just to understand the potential,
I think,
what the proposal would be
yeah, I
in
think we're
the
stepping
scope
away
of
from the
project.
contract, though. We're
Yeah.
looking at a proposal on what they could deliver and what they would charge, and then
I think that's what I think they did present us already.
Not for the park.
Yeah, I think they did.
Yeah,
A comprehensive proposal to design the entire Pepper Pike Park?
it was.
If we got that, I never saw it.
Roughly 10,000 and change.
It was given to council.
I don't think
Absolutely.
so.
I don't recall that either.
Absolutely.
Could
All right, why
I
don't you pull it up and send it out to me?
yeah?
Yeah,
Would you
send
mind
it out again.
sending that,
Sure.
Joe? And then
yeah, I don't remember it either.
super. I'm excited for this.
I
As
think
know
they
the
actually
committee will
came
be.
in. Didn't they
did
come?
They
in with
came in.
the different slides on the TV with the different parks that they've been involved with.
Right.
No,
April
that
18th.
was for the Gates Mills
That was for the Gates
Trail.
Mills Trail.
No.
April
Yeah.
18th. You can check your emails.
Okay. Well, I want to make sure that we have like all of the.
And that we're understanding the scope of what,
Right. We'll make sure we get that proposal back out to you guys.
Super.
Okay.
That concludes my report.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
You
you.
know what? Sorry. I mean, it looks like it just went to me, you, and Kathy.
Oh, okay.
So that would
Well, then
explain
I-
why there's a big question mark. So maybe that gets sent out to all council. unless
That
I'm
would
looking
probably
at
be
something
helpful.
different.
That would be great.
Okay, I'm writing this down.
There was an email to all council on May 22nd.
Thank you.
Yep.
Department heads.
Charter review.
Commission?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, the Charter Review Commission, this is the November 20th report. The Charter Review Commission has met 4 times since our last council meeting on October 23rd. It met on October 24th, October 28th, November 7th, November 16th, and November 18th. If you think that that's 5, that's not, because November 16th and November 18th meetings were considered one meeting because of the proximity of the two and the shortness of both of them. So these meetings represent about 10 hours of discussion and deliberation, and we owe the 9 commission members our thanks. All members are taking their task very seriously and with input from members of council, the mayor, and residents. Resident input will have been requested at least 5 times before the process is over. It's already been, I think it's already the 5th request for information from residents has gone out today. At the 24th meeting, they went over a report of stakeholder comments, which is the initial information that was sent by residents, and considered a permanent charter review commission, removal provisions for elected officials, qualifications for elected officials, Article 4, the mayor and vice mayor responsibilities and term limits. On October 28th, they decided to add meetings to their schedule on November 7th, November 16th and 18th, and December 7th. They reviewed the draft language of the Charter Review Commission, removal and qualifications for elected officials, and continued discussing Article 4, the mayor, and term limits. On November 7th and 16th, they discussed vice mayor responsibilities versus those of a city council president and continued discussing Article 4. November 18th, they spent time organizing the rest of the meetings, added 3 additional meetings on November 30th, December 2nd, and if needed, December 9th. 4 members volunteered to begin drafting the commission's report to council, and those commission members being Steph Jarrett, Tamara Rinnick, Scott Bilski, and Rob Resnick. The commission at this point is not recommending term limits for any elected officials, a 4-year residency requirement for the mayor, and a 2-year residency requirement for members of council, which, by the way, would not affect any members of council today or the mayor today or anybody I know about in history. But they want to have minimum standards so that at least going forward, it's not a solving a problem, but this is assuring the future. It will recommend the instituting the position of president of council, who, working closely with the mayor, will establish agendas for council meetings and run the meetings. It is also recommending that the charter reviews take place at least every 6 years, and these recommendations are expected in the final report to council. In other words, they aren't final, but I think that they are pretty final. There was a near unanimous agreement on all of those things. So, next meeting again is November 30th. And I believe there's a Zoom meeting tonight where the 4 members of the commission who are drafting the report to council are meeting for the first time.
Thank you, John. Next, department heads. You all set on the plows, Chuck?
Yep. Next week's a 2-day holiday week, so keep in mind that garbage is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Thursdays will be pushed to Wednesday.
Which is pushed to Wednesday?
Thursday's route is pushed to Wednesday.
Thursdays on Wednesday.
So we'll pick up 2 routes on Wednesday.
Okay.
And no Friday, right?
And no Friday. 2 days, 2 holidays.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else?
Currently have 2 new officers in the police academy, and we're halfway through our current sergeant's promotional test for our sergeant that left for a different career a few months ago. So it's a replacement.
Thank you, Chief. All righty.
I just have one, I just wanted to follow up on what we just said about that email that was sent. I think.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm
you've
sorry.
lost
The email from MKSK, the email I'm going through and it loads really slowly. I'm scrolling through it and it's comprised almost completely of just playscapes, meaning playgrounds, which I think is a huge integral part of what we're talking about. But we might want to have the discussion about whether we're doing a more holistic approach. Like we have a pavilion, for example, in our park. We have bathrooms, we have benches and plantings, and that is not really what this includes.
Okay,
It just
well,
sort of stops. So it might be a bit more holistic that if we're doing it, we might as well do it the right way.
No, I'm not saying we can't do it, but why don't we keep on track as to where we are in our meeting right
Yeah, well, no,
That's
but
my
I
suggestion.
wanted to correct something that was incorrectly stated.
Okay. We're at our year end. Congratulations to all for coming along to get here. We will be doing some year-end reviews. I know with Joe, we're going to be probably, I don't think it's going to be at the November, but in maybe December, probably not till January, so it's a full year review. We'll be bringing in our representatives from Fifth Third who advise on our investment portfolio to come and report certainly to the Finance Committee. If all of council want to see them, you should probably come to the Finance Committee, or we can do it to council on our investment portfolio and performances. We're winding up our centennial year. There are just a couple of Fun Fact Fridays left. We have no more formal programming involved. As we approach the year end, I want to thank our wonderful staff and particularly Tara in building, who has, for the Fun Fact Fridays, has taken on the task of composing and searching out and suggesting many topics that we have focused on. She's done just a marvelous job. I know she was meeting with residents today again, who came forward with some suggestions that they wanted to offer up to look to. And I just think we all need to acknowledge the really terrific job that our staff has performed on this, not only Tara, but Rachel, Becky, Sheila. They've all done a terrific job here for us.
You're here.
And thank you to them. We do have a meeting next week. I will not be at it. I will be out of town because it's the night before Thanksgiving. Traditionally, we have not had meetings the night before Thanksgiving. It's really up to council and your discussion, I think, that you can undertake now as to whether or not that's going to go forward or not next week. I know a lot of the staff will not be here because they are going to be either traveling to be with their own families, preparing for the next day, which the Wednesday evening before Thanksgiving often involves. So I leave it to council's discussion what you want to do for next week.
Unless there's something of great urgency, I can't imagine that we need to meet next week.
We deferred that one ordinance, but there's no urgency on that one, right? Okay. And there's nothing else from your perspective that's coming up that?
No.
Anyone else that?
No. And exciting because next year it'll be on a Tuesday, so we won't have.
Yes, fix this
We'll be able to meet.
We'll fix this phenomenon.
It will be corrected going forward.
It's a yearly phenomenon. That's the day
I'd
before
say-
Thanksgiving. You're right.
Let's take this final one off because this is it.
In the following.
The following meeting would be the 18th.
It would be the December 7th budget meeting.
Budget meeting on the Saturday, right?
And I know I've mentioned it in previous years, but one thing we might consider in advance, if we look at the calendar, moving that meeting to the following week after Thanksgiving. And sometimes it would have worked out this year, for example, I think, but
Then there'd be 3 meetings in December.
well, but a lot of the time it seems like we end up canceling one of those December meetings, so we would just rectify. We wouldn't, that way we would only lose, in my mind, we'd only lose 1 meeting instead of losing 2 meetings, which has happened some years. I think
see your
last year we lost. So it's just an idea to middle it between the week after. I know it's way too late this year to do it, but it's something to consider in the future.
So the last meeting of the year, well, we're not meeting have we decided we're not meeting on Christmas?
That was moved to
We did.
the 30th.
We have one on the December 30th.
December
technically.
30th.
Okay. Okay, oh, that's right. I forgot that. All right.
So are we officially canceling next week, Mayor?
Yeah, I think I'm comfortable.
Council?
I think we should cancel it. If something were to come up, we could call a special meeting to address some
Yes, we
urgent
can.
matter.
We
So
can.
I think that for everybody's planning, it would probably be appropriate to cancel it.
Okay.
Okay.
You can
I'll
put
put a
that,
notice
you
out
can make that
tomorrow.
official then. All right. I wish, since we won't see each other before the holiday, I wish everybody a really wonderful Thanksgiving. This is in many ways my favorite holiday
Here, here.
because it doesn't have a lot of the other, it doesn't carry a lot of burden with it. It may be preparation burden, but a lot of other things you don't have to worry about. It's simply being together with your family, your friends, people who are important or sometimes not important that you've simply invited to be part of it. And because they're by themselves. And it's a wonderful time. What we will be launching later this week, we had a very successful foster children toy collection. I'm very proud to report we more than doubled the goal.
I walked in the service department, it looked like Santa's workshop in there.
Phone lines are still open. You can still make your donations if you haven't done it. And it's just been a marvelous program. And again, thanks to the team here who came up with this new innovation as to how Pepper Pike can give back, since we live a very blessed life here that everyone doesn't get to enjoy. What we will be launching right on its heels, though, is our annual holiday Harvest for Hunger campaign. It's been very successful. It's something that I observed the food bank is doing itself now widely. I don't know which came first, us wanting to do it or their adoption of it, but and they were just named one of the premier food banks in the United States, which was really, it was a great recognition of the superb work that they do. And a lot of the work they do, if you're not familiar with it, has been the development of their community service center, which was the conversion of the old food bank building on South Waterloo to become a full service center of, one-stop shopping for a lot of people in need who take a day off from work just to get to the food bank. Now that day off from work, they can touch all the different agencies and support systems that help them in their lives. And it's become a model to be emulated throughout the United States, actually. And it's really a marvelous contribution they've made to helping those who need it most. So anyway, we'll be opening that up And I hope everyone will see it in their hearts to make contributions to that program. And with that, I wish everybody a very happy holiday. I hope it's something special for everybody. Council, do you have anything?
I have one.
I have two. You go first.
I want to thank the mayor for asking Steve to work with me. We've started working on an ordinance to establish an investment advisory committee, which would include resident members who would have expertise in the area of investing. It's not quite ready to bring out, but hopefully at the next meeting or the meeting after that, we'll be ready to put something out for you to take a look at.
And what would they do that the finance committee doesn't do?
They would have expertise in investing, which
I have, Jackie has.
which
Not municipal investing, right?
well, investing in fixed income securities, and it would include residents who have this expertise. To me, it's we have a rather large asset which we use, and to not have professional management and people looking over it is like doing infrastructure projects without an engineer.
Wow.
So I think that it's something that's very important. I've spent years and years in the investing area, including at the Art Museum with $750 million. And I learned a lot along the way from people just like this. And if you think you know a lot now, you'll know a lot more if we establish this commission.
Right. Well, it's something that can be discussed, obviously.
Yep.
I don't know that I agree with, some of the conclusions that you had there. I think we do have experts in the
I didn't
Fifth Third
have any
advisors.
conclusions. I said we can do better.
Okay,
always
well, I think
do
that's the discussion we're going to
Yeah.
have, and we'll look forward to that.
While
Kathy?
we're talking about money, unfortunately, I'm going to miss the budget meeting, but I was wondering if the city as a whole, because we do have a surplus, some residents have asked for some other amenities maybe to look at. Like, I know we've talked about it before, but leaf pickup, Mayfield Heights has it, and they're like, why don't we have it? Our community. And I think Jim spoke to it before about the equipment needed, but maybe we could share with the community, or I don't know. Jim, can you remind me what you said about the leaf pickup situation?
For equipment, imagine sharing equipment between two hospital rooms
Uh-huh.
at the same time.
How much is it to buy that sucker thing?
A tow behind trailer is probably around $150,000. That's a manually operated one. They have automated ones. Tack on another 30 to 50,000 on top of that. A machine for us, we would need probably 3 machines. You have to staff those machines. You have to be able to dump the product you pick up. If you need to get an idea of how many leaves you're talking about, ride over to Orange Village. Look on Pike Street down in their park. That's where they dump all their leaves.
Mhm.
Look at their pile and double it because we're double the size of Orange Village.
Okay.
So I just talked to Lyndhurst, who used to dump in, I think it was East Lake. That dump got closed down for one reason or another. Now they're running out to 87 in Newberry. So they've taken a trip that was 45 minutes and turned it into an hour and a half. So you have a lot of things that don't
Yeah.
work.
Right.
And on top of that, it's staffing.
Yeah.
And it's in the worst time of the year because it's winter,
Right.
or it's the start of winter. And now once the leaves go away, or once the snow comes on top of the leaves, Pepper Pike being Pepper Pike, come April, they're gonna want us to be out there picking up leaves again. So these are a lot of the things that I told Jackie. She stopped in and we talked about. I've been saying the same thing. I know Bob Girardi, who before me, said the same thing.
Okay.
That's where we're at with a lot of that.
And then some people have asked, since we do have a surplus, if there's any way to kind of, I don't know if there's a formula. I think other cities have done it, but maybe giving back to the residents some sort of, I don't know how it works.
I think Mano mentioned that
yeah.
in the past, and
Right.
it's at least fair discussion, I think. I mean, I don't know where I would
I
fall
don't
on
know
it,
how
but
it
it's part of
works.
the whole budget conversation.
It would have to be a forward-looking tax cut.
Right.
It's the only practical way to do that. And I'm supportive of taking a look at that because the surplus is
Yeah.
growing. We've kept up on capital very well
Right.
now. We were behind, but now we're caught up. And
I think the problem with giving money back is it's hard to give it back to the people who gave it.
Right. No, I know.
And so
I know.
going forward might be the way to,
Yeah.
it's the way to do it.
Yeah.
to view this.
Okay.
It would be nearly impossible. It would be unfair because
Right.
I paid taxes
Right.
before. I don't pay much now.
Mhm.
I'm just an example because I'm retired, but
That's something to think
there'll be
about.
lots and lots of
Yeah.
people.
Right.
So
And you-
giving money back, I think.
And you
is
couldn't do it
nonstop.
on a continuing basis. You could only do it, I think he suggested, and I'm not sure what I think about it, but on a 1-year basis, because you really tie your hands.
Right. Right.
for
well,
more-
if it's under state law, you can correct me, Steve, but at 1% or below, council has complete control of that. If it goes above 1%, you need a vote of the people.
Right.
So we have great flexibility to take it to 0.9
Okay.
and then do that for a year. And
Yeah,
we could raise it right back up again if we thought that was an issue.
Mhm.
I just would never want to tie, and I don't know what I would think. I think it's worthy of conversation. I just know that you would never want to tie your hands
Right.
because
No
of
question.
economics times could
And-
change.
Right.
The 1% level by state law gives a lot of flexibility.
Okay, that's really good to know.
And then my other topic was safety on the trails. We got an email from a resident that they had a concern that there's not a crossing light from East Shaker crossing New Brainerd. I don't know, Don, is there anything we can
Yeah,
do to?
that's been there for like 20 years.
No, I
So
know.
it's not anything new.
But with more
as
people
more people
trying
use
to
it,
connect to,
Yeah, that
Beechwood.
particular location, to do work there would require maybe a reconfiguration of that signal.
okay.
It's gotta
Because
be
I
tied
know a lot of
into-
people like to run and go far distances to actually connect and be safe crossing. I don't know.
Right.
Something to think about. And then on Gates Mills, what's the rule for people on the circle here? And then if someone's crossing, a pedestrian's waiting to cross Gates Mills where there's not a stop yield to go north on it, is the car supposed to stop in the circle? Because I've had residents ask me,
That doesn't exist.
No,
There's no spot
there
where we need
is.
to do that.
so on the circle here,
When you're
when you're trying to go right off the circle up Gates Mills, there's
There's a stop sign.
no, there's
No,
not.
Not if you're on the circle.
On the circle, on the circle.
Oh,
Get
you're
on
you're
the
Going
coming,
north.
you're coming around the circle.
Yeah, coming around the circle and
Okay,
then
it's
going, but
north
there's
east.
somebody waiting
Yes.
there to cross, but there's not a stop sign. So who?
Right, no, they need, the pedestrian actually has to wait in that case.
Okay, so then we should probably let people know. I just am.
Tricky because that
It's-
circle's fast.
It's fast and then you see a pedestrian, you think, oh, I should stop. But then you're like, I'm in the circle. I should.
Well, the reality of it is, I mean, typically any crosswalk,
Right.
you're supposed to yield to the pedestrian.
Exactly.
crosswalk. You don't need to stop, but if somebody's out there in the crosswalk, you are supposed to yield. And that might mean that you have to come to a stop on the street. It would be no different if they were crossing mid-block, halfway down, and we had a mid-block crosswalk.
But you know what I mean? Like, so at that particular instance,
Well, maybe,
Car
Don,
has a
maybe we'll
right of
put a small sign there that says pedestrian yield to traffic or something.
yeah, maybe,
Yeah, it's,
Just to eliminate any confusion
yeah.
of
Just 'cause-
the pedestrian.
Right.
That they have to
Yes,
yield.
exactly. That would be good.
I
Have
think,
that.
I think that can probably be accomplished.
And then I have a little concern on when you're going up north, the trail looks like it's very close to the road, and I'm afraid that there's going to be like a kid who's training on their training wheels or somebody, and they could fall into the road. I know we talked about it before, but is there any way to put like a barrier or
A gate or a fence, you mean?
something, a barrier, just so that people can't fall off and people can't really, I know we talked
I know
about
what you're
it.
saying. I think anything that you put in there
Uh-huh.
also becomes actually a bigger hazard that a car hits that, it becomes a projectile. I think you leave the area open. I don't.
But what if you put those sticks?
I would not recommend putting those in next to a pedestrian. If somebody slides off the road, the good news is they didn't go way too far off, but they hit 5 of the sticks and somebody's walking and got hit by the debris.
Or is there a way to put they put speed bumps on gates or, to slow down traffic? So, we have the smiley signs and that's great, but speed bumps to slow the cars down?
I think that the speed bumps, I don't see that there's actually a problem. So you always have to ask, what problem are we trying to fix there? Cars are not flying down that section of Gates Mills at 50 miles an hour.
They are.
No. I don't know that's really the case, but we could put up caution signs and tell people, pedestrians nearby or something like that. I think you really have to be cautious to try to put up obstructions to make things safer. The obstructions themselves become a safety hazard. So I would rather leave it open. The same kid riding his bike, there's a car every 5 minutes, but they could also fall into those things that we're putting up there to protect them. So I think it's about a 5-foot tree lawn. If you go into a more urban setting, a 5-foot tree lawn with a curb is all the protection anybody gets on a sidewalk, all over, pick a community in anywhere in Northeast Ohio. That is the normal amount of space between a sidewalk and the traffic. So it's not an unusual situation. That is well within the design constraints. It is very safe. I think we should just let it operate the way it is. And if it does become a problem, then I think we could add additional signage, but I don't see it as being a problem right now.
And then the third thing is the mounds. Are those the height that they're going to be at? That's to grade along this part. There's some of them that are a little bit higher than I thought.
They're not all done yet. So some of them are still being worked on.
Okay.
Also,
because I'm afraid of line of
with
sight.
mounding, you
Yeah.
have to remember that the material itself is compactable.
Right.
So you set the grade and everything's great, and then about 2 years later, it's actually dropped a foot. So we do have them maybe a little higher than people thought they should be to start off with. But what happens is they do settle. That is primarily topsoil material, and over time it does compress, 10, 15, 20%, and you do lose some of that height. You're also looking at it right now in the fall with basically almost no vegetation on it. It looks more stark. It'll really soften up as all the landscaping kicks in.
I don't care about the starkness, but it's just kind of safety and line of sight, especially at that Kersdale crossing. And they look so nice and high that I'm afraid kids are going to start sledding down those mounds and getting in the street.
I don't anticipate any sled drivers.
Oh.
I think, and again, the Kersdale intersection is a stop in every single direction. So
I wouldn't slide down that hill. It looks fun.
Okay, so it'd be one sled rider.
Yeah.
I think we just have to, and they're not totally done. The Kersdale crossing spot,
right?
They still have the walls to build. There's still work to go on there. Those are not finished yet.
Okay.
I think Kathy brings up a good point about people. There are people, and I know it's nearly impossible to stop on these straightaway streets. There are people who pick up speed. I want to commend the police for their fantastic sign with the smiley face or the frown. And there's I don't know if you know, but a nearby community has a different use of the bottom. It says something like, "We're watching you," I think is the wording. I kid you not. So I think it's excellent. It really kind of makes people be aware, but in a friendly way. And maybe that would be something we might want to think about. I know you move them around on Gates Mills where people, I know I've been there and people, get in their drag race mode and go quick. And they also pass school buses when the school bus is stopped, which is unbelievable, but people actually do that. So if we could, continue with our smile frown, I think it's great.
Actually, we had a competition in the department as to who smile and frown to imitate for that.
Really?
But I think it's great.
Bucky's doing a great job of getting us video on the violators as well.
The buses,
Good.
yeah, I know, I know,
love
it's a
that.
pet peeve of mine,
Yeah, we
just
follow up on those
unbelievable
all
to
the
me.
time. Yeah, they do a good job.
It's unbelievable.
Good.
Yeah.
That's great.
Audience comments? Penny? Start in the corner.
Grace Barber, 33,000 Shaker Boulevard. Just want to inquire where we stand on accessibility to City Hall for our handicapped residents, both immediately and long-term, so that they have the same opportunities as all of us do in City Hall before and after council meetings or any other meetings that take place.
It stands where it was last publicly discussed is where it stands.
Are we getting a new plan from them? Or I forget where.
Anyone else?
No.
Vera Barter Savage, 29600 Shaker. I just want to thank the mayor, Mayor Bain and Don Sheehy for spearheading the projects, the linear park and the sidewalks. I've spent time and time again on all of those. I've met probably hundreds of people, go and talk to them. Last week I met a woman named Charlotte. She's going to be moving in February 2025 into the creative living that's on Ursuline campus. And she is so thrilled, met her and her mother. And she is thrilled because she will be walking to her job. I believe she works across the street. And she will be able to walk to her mother's house, which is off of, she's off of Gates Mills somewhere over there. So she's just thrilled. And then we met, my husband and I met two young ladies. I think, Richard, you were there too. We met Richard on the trail, and we met two young women jogging from Ursuline, and they're from Germany. And they are so thrilled because they are here without a car. They're on scholarship for soccer. So they are just thrilled to be able to get out and jog along. And everybody we meet, met people coming in from Shaker Heights, from University Heights, bikers, people with dog walkers. A couple of kids got scooters for their birthdays and skateboards. So it's just bringing the community together. Every time I ask somebody, how do you like it? No one says, I don't like it. Everybody says, what is the next plan? So, so they're very excited. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Leskovic?
Yes, first of all, happy holidays, everyone. Recently, on 271, there was someone who was going out the wrong way, and there was a collision in which a couple of people were killed. Now, on Gates Mills Boulevard, it is not unusual to find somebody going the wrong way. Now, there is considerable marking on Gates Mills, but I would suggest taking a further look at it and see if some of that marking in any way should be enhanced, because it kills the hell out of you when you're looking out the window and you, as a matter of fact, the day I was walking, I waved right away somebody down who was going the wrong way. And I think those of us familiar, you've seen it right. And so I think it's worth taking a look at, especially if the park develops. We have more people there. The possibility is going to be greater. Though maybe there's nothing more we can do, but I think we should at least take a look.
We'll evaluate it. Thank you. Absolutely.
And I'll thank everybody else by not saying anything more.
Happy holidays, sir. Mr. Knapp?
Manny Knapp, 2632 Summit Center. Again, happy holidays to everybody. Just a quick couple questions on here. The first one is on resolutions. The reason why I'm asking that is because on today's schedule, item number 5 and item number 9. Okay, one says it's a first reading for a resolution, and the other one doesn't have anything. I thought in the past, Steve, that it was identified that resolutions do require 3 readings on them, just like is that correct or not correct?
No, but resolutions can be passed on first reading.
Generally, we don't say first reading on resolutions, I believe.
Well, we have been, and
We
that
have
one
been
I
now?
did, that was my mistake, not putting it on that.
On the second one.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, with that, again, a small point in here, we were talking about item number 39, that Cuyahoga County was very specifically asking everyone to do it the same way every year, you had to reapply. We did that vote without suspending the rules on there. I'm not sure if that's a problem, then or not, but just, quick heads up on that. The rules weren't suspended and you took a vote, to approve it.
You don't suspend rules for resolutions.
Okay, so the next point, very important point out here, Sheila fills a lot of job responsibilities in that chair. And there was a quick comment that she's not going to be available at some of the meetings on here. So who's running the YouTube? Who's doing the attendance? Who's taking the votes and things like that? I really think that you folks need to talk about, okay, who's going to fill that spot? There should be somebody, filling that spot. Number 3 is temporary signage on Gates Mills Boulevard. In driving up and down on Gates Mills Boulevard, I see a lot of people, and this would be just initial temporary signage. Could be one sign that lists boom, 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 boom on there. One of the items is people are on there after dark, okay? On there, I thought that we said that the park was going to be, closed, for people on there. But people are walking, on there with flashlights and so forth on here. So the item of, the hours of the park, I think there should be an item that's, because we talked about it before, that there's no motorized vehicles allowed, on there. And with that, because there's these motorized bikes and there's golf carts, and for somebody that lives on a mixed-use trail several months a year, the different things, you're amazed about one-wheels, motorized skateboards, and again, an item of, maybe we're gonna say that this is not, for skateboards and things like that. So I think that there needs to be, to what we talked about as we're putting that process in plan, what is and isn't allowed on there, and that should go up right away before people start to get set, in their ways. So that's number 3. Number 4 is, similar to what just commented. My recollection was that when MKS came made their report, the last time about the park back over here, Jim LeMay, even said to the person making the report, was, we'd like you to look at this, as a blank slate, on here. And with that, the item, where Joe mentioned that, $10,000 up here. And so the recollection was, that was said and agreed to, and they were going to come back, to us up there. So I'm glad that that's, proceeding forward. The last item I have is in the budget process. Again, we did a terrific job this year. We have a $2.3 million more income than we did for expenses on here. And I think, to what was said, one of the things that should be discussed in an open council meeting on here, should be on the agenda, is should we prioritize based on how Mano Daga came up with this proposition? One time only, each year you look at it, at the end of the year, when you know you really have the funds there and they're, in hand, you decide, okay, is there going to be a return, to folks, or isn't there going to be a return, to folks? And that should be one of the items, that is definitely prioritized, in our budget process, which is coming up. So I think that really needs to be, addressed again. $2.3 million. And basically every year for the last 12 years, and again, congratulations to the city. This is how we grew from $0 to $21 million now in the general fund. And not to have a discussion about, okay, do we want to prioritize this or don't we want to prioritize it? It really needs to happen. So again, happy holidays, everybody.
Thank you.
Mayor, I would like to follow up on what Manny said. Do we have any
Such strong.
regulations that people know about using the trail?
No, nothing's been promulgated yet. We've generally talked, but there,
When do we plan to do that?
Yeah,
It's like-
we should make those regulations.
I think we talked about seeing how it's used and reacting rather than getting, that was my thought.
yeah.
But
That's a fair.
But after
already
dark,
we've seen some people on motorized vehicles going through there, people on racing bikes going through there. I think
On the
that's,
asphalt part?
yes.
yep.
You
I
can't say you
think we
can't
need.
use it after dark. You got, I mean,
No,
Beechwood
we'll take
does?
we'll take
can't walk your
a
dogs on the
timely
trail.
look.
Motorized
and-
vehicle.
Oh, no,
Well,
no, no.
motorized vehicles.
Beechwood says you
Can we do one at a time, please?
Yes, sorry.
Why don't we put this on the agenda
Yeah,
and
that's a
talk
good
about
Yeah,
it?
yeah, we'll do one. I appreciate.
I
My
think
question was only-
let's not do
I thought
this
it
on the
was-
fly.
It was a good point, and I think we should.
It
put
is a
on the
good point,
agenda.
and we did talk about that we would address it over the winter would be the perfect time.
Yeah, well,
Okay. That said, thank you, Scott, and we stand adjourned. Happy holidays.
Jackie, for Beechwood, they close it after
Ready to
dusk
go?
and
Okay.
before dawn. You know, it's in front of people's houses. It's in front of